Boo!
Okay,
Hey there.
here's Dan.
You're Darren the Horror
uh,
Man.
Dan, I got a question for you, man.
What's up?
When you think about vampires, what do you usually think about? Like, what's the first thing that pops in your mind?
I better get the heck out of Dodge. Would be the first thing. Just saying.
That's that's a good first thought, honestly. I mean,
Um,
do you picture like, Dracula, or do you picture like the Twilight sparkly kind, or do you picture something like what we're about to talk about, or like what do you
well,
kind of picture?
I mean, recently, I guess we're forced to think a little bit about Abigail, which is like our number one performing video as of late. So, if you guys have found that, tuned into that, and have found us from there, thank you for tuning in with us. Hopefully, you have subscribed. Also, like and comment. Let us know what you liked about the video. But truthfully, Matt, I would say that probably this type of vampire here, with Interview with the Vampire, really set the stage for vampires as I know them or like to think of them. How about you?
I'm old school. When someone says vampire, I think dressed in black with a cape and the receding hairline and the sharp fangs. I'm thinking like Dracula. Specifically, I love the Christopher Lee version of Dracula, which I hope at some point down the road we get to at least one of those. He did like a dozen of them. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. But today we're talking about something totally different. But before we do, well, first of all, welcome to Nightmares and Scares, everybody. My name is Matt, and with me is
Dan the Horror Man. Whoa.
Dan the Horror Man. This is the show. Well, first of all, if this is your first time joining us, thank you so much. We welcome you. We hope you stick around, take a look around the channel, see what else we may have talked about that you like. Um, If you are a returning customer, thank you so much for coming back. We love you just as much. Shout out to our new subscribers. We have quite a few new subscribers. So we thank you for subscribing. Make sure you click the notification bell so you get alerted each and every time we post a new video. Also, I guess I should address the minor elephant in the room. The channel has undergone a significant change. Um, Whereas before in the past, the channel has either been under my name personally, or Matt Knows Best, or at one point in time it was Picture This Film Reviews. Um, we are now dedicating the entire channel to Nightmares and Scares. That is the name of this show. That is the name of what we're doing here. You can find us at Nightmares and Scares. The show is called Nightmares and Scares. The theme, the layout, it's all been changed to reflect this. And why is that? Because we are putting our full effort into this, mostly due to the reaction from you guys. Your positive feedback has really inspired us, like, okay, we're on to something here, so let's commit to it, and we're committing pretty hard. Plus it gives Dan some credit. you know um it was, I run the channel. I mean, it is my channel. I started as my channel years ago, but this whole horror review podcast wouldn't even be a thing without it being Dan's brainchild. So it gives Dan some credit. So it's not just, oh, well, that's Matt's YouTube channel. No, this is our YouTube channel. So Nightmares and Scares is our show. And as much as it is Dan and I's show, it is all of our shows. So again, thank you for tuning in. Welcome to Nightmares and Scares, the show that invites you to grab your popcorn and your PJs, and come to a place where every day is Halloween. A boy's best friend is always his mother. And that monster under your bed, it's absolutely real. Dan, we mentioned it. We're talking about Interview with the Vampire. A lot of folks call this Interview with a Vampire. A little bit of trivia before we get to the stats. That's wrong. It's called Interview with the Vampire. Um, First of all, before we get into synopsis and all that, just initial thoughts. What was your we've both seen this before, but what's your, upon rewatch, what was your initial reaction to Interview with the Vampire?
So, as you pointed out in the top of the show, I think there is definitely a big shift in the direction that vampires have taken over the course of even our lifetime. And where were you talking, or where you were talking more the traditional vampire, Dracula, Vlad? Um, we really had a shift about the time that this movie was released. Interview with the Vampire released basically the modern version of a vampire that other films. Not saying that they're the same, but they do take inspiration from this. That could be even up to Twilight, Abigail, What We Do in the Shadows, popular TV show, but also a movie based on that. So there's a lot of things that we associate with vampires today that come directly from this movie. So just off the top, I know that this has relevance as a film, not only just in horror in general, but to the vampire part of it. So hard to think about what vampire movies would be today without Interview with the Vampire. So really excited to talk about this, and just to get it off the top, address another elephant in the room. It's one of my favorite vampire films of all time. So if you want to know in advance where I'm probably going to be rating this, it's gonna be probably toward the top. But Matt, how about you, man?
So the very first time I ever saw this movie, I was working close to your parents' house, within walking distance. I didn't walk, I drove, but within walking distance to your parents' house. And I don't remember if it was during a lunch break or if it was after work. I feel like it had to have been after work. Maybe we were planning like a hangout weekend or something, because I came over and you guys had this on. And it must have been fairly on in the beginning because I sat and watched it with you, and what felt like I had seen the whole movie. So I don't think you guys had gotten very far into it. And I watched it, and I remember thinking then, huh, I mean, I had obviously heard of the movie before, being, you know, being a kid of the '90s, you could not have not heard about this. Plus, if you're a movie fan, you know who Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt are. So, two of the biggest stars in the world are in this movie. Um, unless you're under a rock, you've heard of this. But I had never seen it, and I was like, "Huh, that's not what I pictured this movie to be." But I'm kind of intrigued. And then I hadn't watched it since, until I got ready to watch it for this show, and I went back to it, and I it's still intriguing. It's still something that interests me, but I also am gonna kind of throw a wrinkle on things. I don't love it.
Leave it to Matt to throw the wrinkle on things, guys.
I
We've
don't
tried
hate it.
we've tried so hard to find a movie that he'd rate as a 10. I can't wait to see where this is going.
I don't hate it, but I don't love it. And I guess we'll get into that a little bit more. Um, But before we do, let's kick off things as is tradition. We're going to talk about the film itself. It is directed by Neil Jordan, and its runtime is 123 minutes. So that's 2 hours and 3 minutes. For those of you who are familiar with this show or our previous shows, you know that that's about a half hour more than what our typical, the box that we like to be in, that 90-minute uh, box that we like to put ourselves in for
Yeah,
comfortability.
we definitely like bite-sized films, ones that you can sit down in one sit without having to get up in the middle for intermission, refilling drinks, getting more snacks, taking a bathroom break, and that's where the
Yeah.
running gag from that comes from.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the wheelhouse of the 90 minutes is where we like to be. But the real test of things is when a film does go over that 90 minutes, does it feel like it's gone over that 90 minutes? Because some movies I've sat and watched for 3 hours and it felt like no time has passed. Other movies I've sat and watched for an hour and a half and it's felt like it's 3 hours. So it really just depends.
And also
Uh,
depends on how much Matt has imbibed prior to.
how much I've what?
How much you've had to drink.
Oh, sorry. I wasn't picking up the reference. I was like, "What are you talking?" So yes, as mentioned, is directed by Neil Jordan. Neil Jordan has directed other things such as Greta, Mona Lisa, um, The Crying Game. This is definitely one of his bigger films that he's directed, and it is about a vampire who relates his epic life story of love, betrayal, loneliness, and dark hunger to an over-curious reporter. The film stars, as we mentioned, Tom Cruise. If you do not know who Tom Cruise is, I mean, you are watching a horror show, so I guess it's possible, but highly unlikely. Tom Cruise, one of the biggest stars in the world, Mission Impossible, Top Gun. Need I say more? Um, Brad Pitt, perhaps the other biggest star in the world. Um, Fight Club, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Seven, more recently, Babylon, Bullet Train, Ocean's 11. Uh, they're both massive, massive movie stars, the definition of a movie star in this day and age. We also have Antonio Banderas in this, who I completely forgot was in this movie until he walked on screen. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm here for it. We have Christian Slater as the interviewer in the title. And then finally, we have Kirsten Dunst, a very young Kirsten Dunst. And wow, she is fantastic in this. But that's our synopsis and cast. I'm going to kick it back over to Dan so we can discuss some stats.
And before we get directly into the box office numbers, and I know we probably have kicked that off quite a few times. We said before. We're getting to the main attraction, folks. Just keep with us. So, one thing I did want to point out, vampires, as we know them, modern day vampires, would not be who they are or what they are today if it wasn't for the writings of Anne Rice. That being stated, and I had to be educated and heartbroken to hear this as well. She has passed away as of a couple years ago, no longer with us, but she's responsible for writing what's called the Vampire Chronicles. First three books in the series that she wrote feature the stat. The first was Interview with the Vampire, released in 1976. Interview with the Vampire. Number two, The Vampire Lestat, released in 1985. And then The Queen of the Damned in 1988. These books chronicle Lestat's origin story, his struggles with immortality, and his search for meaning. Um, this is considered an unofficial trilogy focused on Lestat within the larger Chronicles that she has written. So keep that in mind. Matt and I may briefly talk about the Queen of the Damned, but probably not too much into this episode. It's not the feature for us. After that, box office, the budget for this was $60 million, so pretty sizable. And in the opening weekend alone, the US and Canada, this movie brought in $36,389,705. Uh, Altogether, grossing the US and Canada $105,264,000, and gross worldwide $223,664,000. So by no means was this really anything short of a great box office rake in on this. And you definitely see why they might have wanted to touch back on the Lestat story in The Queen of the Damned that was released later. So without further ado, the part that I'm excited for and always excited for, as Matt has already kind of popped a little bit of my bubble saying that he's going to put a wrinkle on things. So my bubble, his wrinkle. Matt, what what were we thinking about the movie, man?
So, okay. I'm just gonna go into it. As I mentioned, I don't hate this movie, but I don't love it either. I kind of have weird feelings about it. Uh, as I mentioned, a part of me is intrigued by it. Another part of me kind of found this to be slow and, dare I say, boring at times. Um, but there is a lot to like here. And some of those things are the acting. The acting is fantastic. I'm going to get into those actors here in a moment. The costumes, the set design, the special effects, it all works for me. Um, even I even want to say the writing is really strong, even though I just said the film was boring. So I think the story could have been tweaked a little bit, but the writing itself, the dialogue, I felt was quite sharp. As far as the performances, um, Tom Cruise is fantastic in this. I believe this to be probably one of his best performances of all time. I'm gonna say top 5 Tom Cruise performance, hands down. Um, Brad Pitt is turns in another fantastic performance. I mean, I am not the world's biggest Brad Pitt fan by any means. In fact, just a couple years ago, I was saying that I didn't like Brad Pitt. He has started to warm up on me. Um, and I definitely have come around to him some. So, that a little bit of that might be just I'm not the world's biggest Brad Pitt fan, but no, he was really, really good in this, and the chemistry that those 2 had together just bounced off the screen. It was phenomenal. Um, but speaking of phenomenal, Kirsten mother effing Dunst perhaps stole the show. She totally shows that she's, like, a future star here. Um I don't know how old she was when she did this. I didn't do my research. I would say no more than like 12 or 13. Um, maybe 14, but I doubt it. Um, she's just great. And, in just, this was 94. So in like what, 6, 7, 8 years. So we're 8 years away from that famous Spider-Man upside down kiss that that everyone remembers her for. Um, Antonio Banderas, as I mentioned, he does what he does. Totally forgot he was in this, but he was great. Christian Slater, uh, he was good, and I'm not a I don't dislike Christian Slater, but I felt that they underutilized him, and it was almost to the point of if you're gonna have Christian Slater, and I get he was the interviewer, and the story takes place like, I understand all that, like, the majority of the film is the story that Brad Pitt's character, is telling, so the interviewer really wouldn't have much screen time, but I guess just with the star power of Christian Slater, I'm saying, why doesn't he do more? And I do want to touch on that, maybe some of that is because it was originally casted, to be played by River Phoenix, before he passed away. He passed away right before they started filming this. Um, River Phoenix was meant to play the Christian Slater part of Malloy, and I love River Phoenix. I have seen, damn near all of his films, um, and, Stand By Me is my favorite film of all time. The movie itself is even dedicated to River Phoenix. So, I really I still say to this day, whenever I see him on screen, God, I miss River Phoenix. Of course, his brother Joaquin is, a star in his own right now, but what world we could have lived in with River Phoenix had he continued to live and make some of the movies that he was supposed to make. A lot of his roles went to, you know, either a Leonardo DiCaprio or Christian Slater or in those mid '90s. Um, I think he really would have fit well into this world. More specifically, I could have seen him almost being a vampire better than the interviewer, but we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Um, this is a lot of people's favorite vampire film. But for me, like I said at the top, I'm more of a traditional type of guy. Um, Give me all the Dracula movies, I'm there for it. Even well, the older Dracula movies, the newer Dracula movies, I'm not really there for either. I guess modern modern vampire films, I'm not the biggest star of, is what I'm learning as I'm rambling here. But for a movie to look this good, it's a beautifully shot film and to hold up. It's 30 years old this year and it doesn't look it. I think it holds up very well. Um, it helped launch the career of Brad Pitt, so there's that. And we get a very unique and different performance from Tom Cruise. So all around, I am that's kind of where I'm at with this. Um, again, very mixed bag, mixed emotions, some positive, some negative. I love the acting, love the cast, love the sets, the costumes, everything. I just wasn't sold on the movie as a whole.
And Matt, it's interesting that you said that it does feel slow at times, but at the same point, you are interested in the story. Like it does kind of grab you a little bit. And the
Yeah,
acting, I agree, is definitely phenomenal. So that's going to be a couple things I touch on mine. But as far as this story goes, we're first introduced to Louis, who is dealing with the death of his wife and unborn child. And he is mad at the world. He is looking for a way to just make it go away, let it all stop, up to the point that he's willing to just throw everything away and end his life. But instead of finding death or peace in death, he's introduced to Lestat. And Lestat gives him a choice. Either you can die because I've bitten you, drained you of all of your blood up to the point of you dying, or take my gift, take this life, take this immortality, and live with me and come with me. And something in Louis tells him, I want to live, I want to move forward. So he ends up becoming a vampire. And in the beginning, he's a very broody vampire. He's one that's, still upset. It doesn't fill the hole that's inside of him. And in some ways, it amplifies it. And we see that Lestat, is he's been in this role for however long he's been a vampire, and he's just about having fun, making the most of it. And Tom Cruise does a really great job of captivating how flamboyant and how mischievous and how, at some points, downright evil Lestat is. He's playing God in a lot of ways, in a lot of respects, even to the point of raising someone else from the dead. But then we have Louis, on the other hand, that's still caught somewhere between vampire and mortal, that has a lot of this moral sensibility. He tries to hold out for a long time, trying not to feast on anyone's blood. He eats a lot of animals, which apparently does not have the same quality as human blood. Go figure. Um, until he meets Claudia, who's downtown where the Black Plague is broken out. People are dying all over the place. She's told to stay away, but what is that for a vampire, And he goes in. Claudia's mother had passed away. His child is in grief, and something in him snaps. He can't control himself, and he bites her, and he drains her blood, but not with the intention of making her a vampire. But she is found by Lestat, who gives her the gift as well. And Claudia ends up becoming a vampire. She's brought back, and for a time, they become almost like a happy family. And they play dress up, and they go out, and they hone her skills as a vampire or predator. And for a time, Louis is happy, but as these things go, eventually Lestat goes back to his old mischievous ways. He has no regard for their feelings and takes Claudia and Louis both as more playthings that he's just unwilling to give up. And Louis and Claudia decide enough is enough. And after, a couple attempts of getting rid of old Lestat, they start in their own journeys. And later on, we see that Louis is faced with something that we kind of all are, even as humans, looking for purpose. We learn so little from Lestat about his past, his background, other than somebody turned him, and that was pretty much it. He wasn't guided, he wasn't taught, wasn't shown. So Louis looks for that link. He wants to be connected. He wants to try to find one, where's the source of all of this? And two, what is the purpose? And it takes him around, and eventually he is introduced to Armand, who is played by Antonio Banderas, and introduced into that world. And Antonio Banderas, pretty much same as Lestat in some ways. He's created this atmosphere around him. He is the oldest known vampire to us at this time, and he's tired of it. He's bored. He wants something different. He sees Louis as something different. He sees Louis as a protege, and he orchestrates this whole thing to eliminate poor Claudia. She's taken because they believe Claudia is the one who orchestrated the death of Lestat. The mind reader vampires, gauge that out of her. They put her in a pit. They burn her, and the one that she just turned, or that Louis turned for her, up. Um, and Louis finds out. He's obviously devastated. He burns down the theater where Armand is based out of. He destroys all the other vampires, and he tells, Armand is like, I know you've orchestrated this, and you're gonna have to be by yourself and deal with the aftermath of that. Going forward, we end up with this interviewer who's tracking his prey, trying to find um, this mysterious man. He knows he's interesting. He wanted to ask him some questions, so he follows him down into a dark alleyway. But do you really think that you can stalk a vampire? I don't know. I don't think so. And it's also been revealed that Lestat is still alive, but we said our words to him. We've left him in the dark again. This burned out mansion, and here we are talking about Louis' story. And was it Daniel Malloy, who is the interviewer, wants this gift. He wants to become a vampire. He feels like this is the whole reason that Louis has brought him in. And Louis says, you don't understand. I've made a terrible mistake, because he was trying to warn him about what he would lose if he ended up taking the dark gift. Um, and Louis, he gets mad. He storms off. Daniel Malloy, I guess at that point, regains his senses and is like, "Oh man, I need to get out of here." And he books it. He runs for his car. He hops in. He's turning on like his radio. He's going down the highway, and eventually he pops in the cassette. I'm wondering almost if it's like, did I really hear what I just heard? And he hears it. It's like, "Oh, that's good stuff. It's good stuff." And who's sitting in the back waiting for him? But good old Lestat, and he gives him the same choice that he gave Louis back in the day. He's come out of his hiding, and he's ready to turn Malloy into a vampire himself. So when you talk about the story, I think that this did an incredible job of building a universe for us. And not only that, just like you had said, the actors did a really good job of conveying it. The atmosphere, the mystery, almost the beautifulness of it that they have. It's intense. I feel like Brad Pitt, I know you said, Tom Cruise for you is like the star of the show. To me, it's Brad Pitt. I feel like he had the similar kind of acting style in Meet Joe Black, and he carries it over here, and it works really well here. I feel like he definitely captures what like an aged vampire would be, very calm, very methodical. I feel like he explains his thoughts very well. They build the atmosphere. He talks about how sweet the air of his home is. He talks about the stench of old death when he returns. Um, and though there are slow moments, they build into the bigger overarching story. And I feel like it's a very strong presentation here. And I 100% agree with you. Kirsten Dunst is a huge performer. You knew that she was going to turn out to be a star just from her performance here. Captures the essence of, I guess, a decades old woman and a little girl, and she was 12 at the time. So amazing for her as well.
It really just makes you think. I mean, because we everyone, I guess, because I had made mention of this was years before the Spider-Man kiss. Well, I mean, Kirsten Dunst was actually, for us '90s kids. I don't know if everyone remembers the Disney ABC Family Tower Terror movie. She was in that. She was in Jumanji with Robin Williams, the original Jumanji. So I don't. This was before I think both of those. This might. I don't. I haven't looked. This might have even been her first film. I'm not sure, but uh, yeah, she just went on to have a huge career by the time she was even before she was even an adult. So yeah, this just shows, like, you watch it, like, yes, like, I see everything that she's going to become in this one movie.
And I almost wonder too on something you said. With River Phoenix being the one originally casted for the role of Daniel Malloy, I feel like that would have been something to see. But I also wonder if they would have incorporated him in a sequel instead of going directly to Queen of the Damned, if maybe they would have built another story around him as a vampire in modern day and just how that would have played out. So, very interesting concept. Just thought about it, but yes,
Yeah, I
sir.
mean, you said the second book was like about Lestat, so I would have been okay with us getting a Tom Cruise vampire movie, a sequel to this or a prequel or whatever that book is. I'm not familiar with the book series, but if it in this, and I don't want it now, but in the 90s, I would have been okay with getting a sequel to this with Tom Cruise as Lestat again. Do we know? Probably not. I can't imagine that there was ever talks of bringing him in the Queen of the Damned.
Yep, as far as I know, not. Just because the amount of time had passed, I'm not 100% sure. Something we definitely look into, but not anything confirmed that I'm aware of.
Gotcha. Well, that kind of sums up Interview with the Vampire. Any final closing thoughts before we rate this?
No, I think again, just how we're talking about in the top of the episode, when you have modern vampires, now it's pretty much a rule. You don't turn children into vampires because they never age, they never get to experience the world as adults. Um, Lestat sat there, or Lestat Louis said that the whole thing with garlic is nonsense. He actually enjoyed looking at crosses. Some vampires that we see today, go through that. Stakes through the heart, he said, didn't work. Even with the newest film, Abigail, that we saw, some of those things didn't work on her either. And even though this wasn't a gory movie like modern day Abigail, I think that it really did a good job of building the mythos of a vampire and making them more mysterious and also trying to elaborate. Like, I mean, they're just like us in certain degrees because they were once us, still have some sense of morality, at least as far as Louis is concerned, and still looking to find out, what is the purpose? What is the reason for all this? And one statement that sticks with me, and I think goes well with closing remarks. If there is a heaven, if there is a hell, I know nothing of it. And what else really can you mark as a vampire? So,
Very good. Um, yeah, I mean, I feel like I've kind of said all I can say on my end. I don't really have anything else to add. But let's go ahead and rate it. We usually do 1 out of 10, a rating system for these, and we try to spice it up each and every episode, make it a little something different, something quirky, something a little funny. So Dan, do we want to do 1 out of 10 neck suckers? 1 out of 10 daggers through the heart, 1 out of 10 child vampires. What are we shooting for here? Oh, you're on mute.
mute even better. I think 1 out of 10 neck suckers would be perfect for this.
1 out of 10 neck suckers. How do we rate this? This is the moment. Drum roll, please. Um, no shock for me. Again, this wasn't my biggest thing. Wasn't my thing. Um, would I rewatch this? Yes. If I'm with someone and they say, "Hey, let's turn on this movie," or if I'm doing something like this and I have to watch it, but on my own just for fun, I'm probably never going to watch this again. I'm at a 6.5, 6.5 with this movie. 6.5 blood or not bloodsuckers, neck suckers. 6.5 neck suckers for me. How about you?
I mean, you are a bloodsucker at this moment, my friend. But overall, I mean, I'm gonna keep it consistent across. I know I've been kind of handing them out like candy lately, but I feel like the importance of this just to the vampire lore and vampire genre in general is just so overwhelming. I've got to stick this one with a 9 as well. And again, not as flashy or as fast paced as Abigail, not as on the nose, but definitely something to take in and think about.
There you have it. 6.5 neck suckers for me, 6.5 or 9 neck suckers for Dan. Almost forgot who you were there for a second. Uh, so now let's get into some real reviews. For those of you who don't know, after we finish up our reviews each and every episode, we try to give you your own feedback, your own reviews on this. We scour the interwebs and find one 5-star review and one 1-star review. Um, and then we read them and show you what you guys think. So it's not just us, we bring the general public into it as well. Um, Dan, last time you read the 5-star, I did the 1-star, so we're going to flip flop it. This time you're going to read the 1-star, and I'm going to read the 5-star. And don't
Oh
worry, as
joy!
opposed to last time, these are much shorter. I know last time I hit you with some really lengthy paragraphs.
I just figured
Uh,
people like hearing me read books, so I said,
so here's our 1-star review.
all right. So Julia Harding writes to us 5 months ago. Don't waste 2 precious hours. Read the book. The only thing vampiric about this film is the way it leeches on the original book. Anne Rice must be turning in her grave. Oh boy. Well, we do know, I know, Matt, you and I talked about this before. Anne Rice actually felt this was a masterpiece. So,
Yes.
unfortunately,
So unfortunately, Julia, that's not accurate as far as we know. I know that she was purely against the casting of Tom Cruise. She was not a fan. And then I guess she saw the film and completely changed her tune. So she quite enjoyed this movie from all things we can tell. So with that, I'm going to read the 5-star. This is from Jeremy Powers, also 5 months ago. Um, this should be the holy grail for vampire lovers. Of all the vampire series I have read and watched, this is the best.
there you go, Jeremy.
Short, sweet, simple, to the point. And I'm kind of in the middle of both of them. Whereas Dan is definitely Team Jeremy. Remember Team Jeremy, Team Julia? That's what we should do. Remember
Oh boy.
Team Edward and Team Jacob?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's vampire and werewolf theme. I guess we'll have to do a werewolf one here soon.
Oh yeah, we got werewolf movies. I was going to say coming up. Nothing's planned, but we're going to get to some werewolf stuff at some point. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you so much for joining us. This would be the part of the show where we tell you what's coming next. We would typically announce the next film. Well, we're going to hold off on announcing the next film purely because our next episode is not going to be a film. It's actually going to be a special episode. We're going to be discussing and ranking the top 5 scariest horror movie children, um, with our review of The Omen, and then, of course, with Abigail. We've covered some freaky little kids here lately, and I even joked with Dan, as mentioned. I'm going to put his son in a horror movie one day. So it's just it's been the theme of Dan and I's conversation within the last month or so. So why not? We're gonna count down who we think is the scariest little kids in horror, and there's quite a few. So that's what's coming next. So we hope you join us for that. Again, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what you're enjoying about this. And let us know if you're not enjoying something about this. If you want to be involved, leave us a comment. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about. If you're an independent filmmaker, if like myself, if you've made a horror film, shoot us a message. Um, Maybe we'll have you on the show. Maybe we'll review your movie. And also, you can now find us on the Instagram. We're moving on up in the world. You can follow us on Instagram at uh, Nightmares and Scares Pod. You gonna say something?
I was just saying that Matt has been a very busy beaver building our online presence. Woo, try to say that 10 times fast. But definitely excited to keep on this journey with you guys. There's no shortage of horror material that exists now, and definitely seems like this year there's going to be no shortage. But again, if maybe you're into some more things other than just scary movies, Matt and I aren't only thinking about sticking to scary movies. We're thinking about going on locations. We're going to cons. We were talking about meeting some special guests. So stay tuned to see where this road takes us. And I hope you stick around long enough for the journey to see. And Matt, I know you wrap it up so dang well. how do you want to sign off for our viewers?
Everybody have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you in your nightmares.